Hey everyone, it's Danny, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making hot cross buns. So I thought I'd whip up a batch of hot cross buns. It's almost Easter and yeah, I really wanted to make hot cross buns. Now I do have a beef with hot cross buns. Here in Australia, and I don't know whether it happens anywhere else around the world, is they decide on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, that they're going to put hot cross buns for sale. And it drives me insane because Easter is 3 to 4 months away and you don't need hot cross buns all throughout the year. Like, you don't need them on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas. So, every year, the only hot cross buns that I eat, unless I'm at someone else's place, are the ones that I make. And I only make them from the start of the month that Easter is in that year, and that's it. For the rest of the year, no hot cross buns. So come along with me and we're going to make hot cross buns today. I hope you like this video, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you try them.
Okay, let's get started with the dough portion of our hot cross buns. So I'm going to start off with 4 cups of plain flour. And I've just got it in my mixer bowl. So if you don't have a stand mixer, you can do it by hand. I just like using the stand mixer because it's far easier and it does all the work for me. But if you don't have one, you'll just have to knead it. Instead of the 7 minutes that I'm going to knead it, you'll need to knead it for 10 minutes, but we'll get to that. I then have sugar. So that's a 1/4 cup of sugar. I have 1.5 teaspoons of mixed spice and a pinch of salt. I have 14 grams of yeast, dried yeast. Now I'm going to put it in my mixer bowl, but I'm going to keep it away from where I put the salt. And then I have 1.5 cups of sultanas. So that is all our dry ingredients. And I'm going to give that all of that a quick mix. Okay, now that that is nicely mixed, I'm going to add 2 eggs that are at room temperature. And in here I have 40 grams of butter that I have melted and 300 mils of lukewarm milk. You want to make sure before you start that everything's either at room temperature or slightly above blood temperature, which is lukewarm, because that means that your yeast won't be cold or it won't kill your yeast if it's too hot. Okay, now that all of our ingredients are in the bowl, we're going to mix this until it forms a soft dough, and then once we've done that, we are going to allow it to knead for 7 minutes. So if you're doing this by hand, you knead it for 10 minutes. If you're doing it in the mixer, knead it for 7 minutes. One thing I forgot to mention is I'm using the dough hook on my mixer, so that's the one you want to use when you're kneading any sort of dough. You don't want to start your countdown timer until all of the ingredients in your mixer are nice and combined. So now that everything is combined in my mixer, this is when I'm going to start my my 7-minute timer in this case. Let's get started. And I'm just kneading on a level 1. Okay, 7 minutes are up. We have finished kneading our dough. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the dough hook. You'll see this is a very soft dough. Don't be tempted to add more flour. You want it to be a soft dough, otherwise if it's too tough, you will get a really, really tough dense bread, or dense hot cross buns in this case. So I'm just using my hands. Yes, my hands are clean. And you want to get as much as you can off the dough hook. I've just oiled my hands a little bit so that I can take the dough out of the bowl and it won't stick to my hands. Now I'm going to use the same bowl for proving. I just want to add a little bit of oil, so that you can actually see what I'm doing. That oil on my hands is, now that I'm turning it over the dough, is actually adding it to the dough. so that I can get it out more easily once it's proved. Now that I've coated it in a little bit of olive oil, now I'm using a light olive oil, so you don't want to use anything like an extra virgin that's too strong. I'm going to leave it in the bowl that we mixed it in because that is nice and clean. There's no need to dirty another bowl when this one is perfectly fine. I'm going to cover it with some, you can use plastic wrap. I've just got a plastic, it looks like a shower cap, but it's actually made for covering bowls. And I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm going to leave it for an hour and a half, depending on how warm your kitchen is. You need it to double in size. So once it's doubled in size, I'll bring you back and we'll start forming them into nice little hot cross buns, and then we'll make our dough mixture so that we can pipe on our crosses. So an hour has gone by and our beautiful dough has risen to double in size. It took me an hour. It took an hour for this to double in size. It's absolutely beautiful. Our next step is that I'm going to press it down and start to form our dough balls. When you press down dough, you don't want to punch it, even though some recipes say punch it down. You want to be gentle. So I'm just going to gently deflate this. And you'll see how beautiful and soft and rested the dough is. At this stage, you don't want to add any more flour. If you add more flour now, that flour hasn't actually gone through and developed any gluten, so you're going to end up with a denser bread. So whenever I make bread after it's had its first rise, I never ever add any more flour. You'll see that the structure of it's not actually sticking to my bench tops. Like when I'm pulling it up, it's not leaving anything on the bench top. So I'm just going to quickly give this just a very delicate knead just to distribute that fruit nicely throughout all of the buns. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this into 12 even pieces. What you could do and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to weigh this dough on a scale. I'm going to weigh it on a scale and I'm going to get 12 even portions. Okay, so somehow I completely stuffed up the math on this one. So I made them 120 grams each when I should have made them around 100. That's okay. We're going to have just bigger, fluffier hot cross buns. What I did do is I did place them 1 centimeter apart, and I am now going to leave them for about half an hour so that they can double in size again before we add our crosses. So we're just going to cover them with a clean, dry tea towel, and we're just going to let them double in size. When we get to the 10-minute mark, we're going to put our oven onto 180 degrees to preheat for 10 minutes. We're then going to create our crosses with our dough, and then we're going to put them in and they will bake until they're golden brown, and when we tap on them, they're hollow on the inside. The last thing that we have to do before we bake our hot cross buns is to create the flour paste so that we can make the crosses on top. That will make them hot cross buns and not fruit buns. So here I have half a cup of plain flour and I have some water. So now I'm going to use between 4 and 5 tablespoons of water to make a paste. I'm going to start off with 4 tablespoons. And then if we need to add more water, we can. That looks perfect to me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into a piping bag and we're going to pipe it on top of our hot cross buns. My oven is currently preheating. Make these for 25 minutes at 180 degrees in a preheated oven, and I'll show you what they look like when we take them out of the oven. The last thing we're going to do once they're out of the oven is to put on a simple sugar glaze. I've just taken these hot cross buns out of the oven. They look absolutely beautiful. They smell really good. The last thing that we need to do before we eat them is to make up the glaze. So that's what we're going to go do now, and then we're going to glaze these. In my saucepan, or in my small saucepan, I have 2 tablespoons of sugar, and I'm about to add 1/3 cup of sugar. What we're going to do now is we are going to put the flame on, allow the sugar to dissolve, and then we are going to boil it for 3 to 4 minutes until it's nice and syrupy, and then we're going to glaze our hot cross buns. Alright, our syrup has been made, now we're going to brush it on. I'm just using a silicone pastry brush, and I'm just going to brush it over each of our hot cross buns. Okay, now that I've finished brushing off the syrup, I'm going to allow these to cool for another 10 to 15 minutes, just so they're nice and warm, and then I'm going to cut some up and we're going to eat some with some nice butter. I've cut them open and they're nice and soft and moist, and that's exactly what you want. So I'm just going to add some butter to these and we are going to dig in.